Yesterday was the first time I really got a chance to take the Niner MCR9 on proper single track and rough double track for that matter. Before I get into that, I want to talk about a conversation that I had with someone at Niner about the MCR. And what they told me was the MCR is not meant to be a mountain bike and gravel bike. It's meant to be a gravel bike done better, and that's their words. They said that the geo, the suspension tuning, the rider position is all geared towards gravel riding. What they told me was the bike behaves best when sitting and pedaling where the rider weight is biased 70% towards the rear. In other words, you don't want to buy the Niner MCR9 to replace a mountain bike. However, if your ride includes a healthy dose of single track mixed with gravel roads, there's probably no better bike on the market. With that, let's go to the video I made yesterday riding the MCR9 on single track and double track. Usually the more grass you get on roads like this, the bumpier it is. And I can't even feel the bumps right now. See this stuff right there, you probably can't see in the video, but it's just little bumps caused by the grass or little divots. This bike just soaks it up. The suspension is tuned so well to absorb those little bumps like this. It's pretty crazy. This suspension, I mentioned it before, but it is tuned to be very linear. So mountain bikes have more progression built in, which means that you sacrifice some small bump sensitivity for the ability to absorb bigger hits. So on 1 to 2 inch size roots, this bike just completely absorbs them. Whereas a mountain bike would absorb them, but it would still bump up a little bit. So here's kind of a steep hill. I haven't ever done this on a gravel bike. It's really chopped up. Whoa! Really chopped up. A lot of debris on here. Oh my gosh, I could have done that a lot faster. I haven't been down here in a while, so I didn't know what kind of condition this thing would be in. Holy cow. This bike's blowing my mind right now. See how this thing climbs fully open. Yeah, if you stay smooth when you're pushing hard and climbing, the suspension stays pretty rock solid. Doesn't move much with pedaling efforts. Okay, so back on single track. It's pretty smooth. It's got some leaves and pine straw, but not a lot of bumps on this one. I will say, if you plan to ride any gravel bike, this one or standard gravel bike, off-road, I'd recommend some tires with a little bit more cornering knobs like these Maxxis Ramblers. The Schwalbe, what are the G1s that come on this bike, I don't think have enough cornering tread for cornering hard on single track. I mean, you can corner easy, but if you like to lean the bike a little bit, I'd definitely get some tires with a little bit more tread, especially in the front. I'm actually having fun on this bike on single track. Usually when I ride a cyclocross or gravel bike on single track, especially the cyclocross bike, it's more just for, handling practice. You have to be pretty cautious over the roots, so it's not a ton of fun. In fact, when I get done with those rides, my hands are kind of sore and can feel it in my back. On this bike, I mean, you can do single track like this, smoother stuff, and just have a blast. I mean, there's some roots here that you probably can't see in the video, but they're only 1 to 2 inches. This bike absorbs them so well. One thing that you also notice on this bike is the amount of braking traction compared to a standard bike, standard gravel bike, when you're on single track. Like, I feel like both tires are really just glued to the trail when I'm braking hard over bumpy stuff, particularly roots. That's what we're dealing with on this trail. Probably a lot more roots than you can really see in the video. I'll also mention that I'm on my carbon wheels because they have these Maxxis Ramblers on them. Normally these wheels would be fairly harsh out here on a standard gravel bike. They're totally fine on this bike. All right, so now I'm on a double track that's very bumpy. Just lumpy soil that would beat you up on a gravel bike. A lot of horses come on this, a lot of debris on it. Got some hills I'll be going on this one. See how the bike does. But so far, buttery smooth. Oh, I don't want to corner hard on these leaves. So I feel like that not only is this bike smoother on these lumpy fire roads, I feel like you can go faster. You're just not getting bucked around. You can just stay in the saddle and crank. Ooh, this is really bumpy. It's really rocky. And the road has gotten even more bumpy. And this bike's not even flinching. This is crazy. I'd be getting bucked all over the place on my RLT9. This is where this bike shines. Like, some of the stuff that I've ridden, you can ride on a standard gravel bike and, you know, you get bucked around a little bit. Stuff where you get bucked around a lot, we got some mud. This is where I think this bike would be like the choice. All right, so here's our single track, starting off with a climb up some roots. Gonna keep the suspension open for this one. I will say this bike feels best when you're in the saddle. Suspension just feels really balanced when you're in the saddle. So now we're coming up to a little single track descent that's fairly rough, and this trail doesn't use very often, so there's a lot of debris on it. Oh, big root. It's kind of rough. Oh man, this is where a dropper post on this bike would be awesome. I just thought of that. That'd be so cool. Put a dropper post on this bike. Oh, so here's a double track descent that's a little washed out in some areas, like right there. was a fairly high log. That's where another place you'd want to have a dropper post. When you kind of go over stuff like that, just to have that saddle so high, a little sketchy. Something else that's worth noting is if your single track has a lot of cornering, your hands have to work harder on these type of brakes, these road brakes, versus mountain bike brakes. So it's not as bad, like my hands aren't as tired as if I were to ride my cross bike. But compared to a mountain bike, you're gonna get some hand fatigue just because you don't have as much leverage on the brakes as you would on a mountain bike. But I tell you, you know, with these smaller tires and like, you know, having to negotiate a corner and, you know, really think about the line you're going to take, mixes it up. So like if you already have a mountain bike and, you know, you ride some gravel and want to kind of mix up your local single track, make it a little different, something like this would be so fun to do that. Like, I'm really enjoying this ride. Again, on my cross bike, when I used to use it for training, it was more just to, you know, work on the handling skills. This is really enjoyable. Oh, this is fun. I like it. I'm powering up this Rudy Climb so much smoother than I would on my gravel bike. Like, I was going over some routes on that climb back there that I just didn't even have to think about it. I just went right over them on this bike. All right, something else that I want to say is this bike is night and day difference between a standard gravel bike. Like it doesn't just take the edge off. It's a totally different ride. You know, a carbon seat post can take the edge off. This bike just transforms riding single track on a gravel bike. All right, so here's the deal as far as riding this bike on single track, it's my opinion, is if you want to combine single track on your ride, in other words, you're not just using single track as a little cut through to get somewhere else, but you're actually riding on single track, you know, maybe 50–60% of your ride, or even less, I think this bike would be perfect. Now, granted, you cannot ride this bike on, you know, rough, gnarly, technical single track. I mean, you could, you just have to take it really easy. Probably wouldn't be a lot of fun. This bike will not replace a mountain bike for riding single track. again, especially if it's rougher. But for smoother single track like this, and like I said, incorporating it into your ride, this bike is so good. And if you ride really rough double track a lot and you're just getting beat up on your gravel bike, man, this bike would be your ticket. I'm not, you know, I'm not just trying to hype this bike up. It really, like, that's what it's made for. Stuff like that. As you can tell, I had an absolute blast riding this Niner MCR 9 on single track yesterday. So if your ride includes single track mixed with rough double track, especially if you're in the mountains and you have some rough fire roads, there's really no other bike like this on the market. I think there may be one other full suspension gravel bike out there, but not many. However, I think in the next year or two, you're going to see more companies coming out with full suspension gravel bikes. I don't have any kind of inside industry knowledge on that. That's just my gut feeling of where this is going. In the next week or two, I'm going to publish a video where I do a time trial between the Niner MCR 9 and my Niner RLT 9 on standard gravel roads to see which one's going to be faster. Any questions or comments that you have so far, drop those below, and subscribe to me on Instagram at ClintG37, where I post a lot of pictures of my rides, the bikes that I'm riding, things like that. Thanks for watching.